Hey guys, in this week's episode, we are going to talk about May, December, but before that, we are talking about Anatomy of a Fall, For All Mankind, Fargo Season 5, and Oldboy. So, join us!
Hello and welcome to the Casual Cinecast powered by Cinelinks, the show where we talk about the TV and movies we've been watching, as well as do a deep dive review of a current movie or a classic film from the Criterion Collection as voted on by the listener via X/Twitter. My name is Justin. With me as always is a man who's wondering if we have enough hot dogs. Chris?
I don't know. I don't know how many hot dogs to buy. You can buy a few. You know, you never know how many hot dogs people are going to eat. So I don't know.
Exactly. and
Yeah.
also
worry.
with us is Mike. Mike, how many hot dogs is too many?
Oh, geez. I would say if you've gotten past 3, that's probably not
3
good,
a person?
right? Yeah, 3 a person.
For your health?
I mean, probably less than that, really. Probably 2. but
Yeah.
I think 3. Let's give people that third
Yeah,
one.
at any sort of cookout situation, I'm a 2 hot dog person, and then I call it done.
Yeah.
'Cause usually there's like chips and other little things to snack on.
Exactly. You don't want to hog the dogs.
No, they're not called hog dogs for a reason.
Exactly.
Yeah, Chris, welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back. I'm glad to be through the holidays. That's my main concern.
Yeah, we missed you.
I missed you guys. I
It was
missed
so
this.
boring. Did you listen to our episodes? If you did, you probably fell asleep.
Yeah,
So
I
boring
mean,
without you.
yeah. Ultimately, that's what happened. In fact, I listened to the podcast just in general to fall asleep. It's nothing like waking up to your own voice. So,
That's true. You're the last thing you hear,
and the first thing.
and the first thing.
And the
Wow.
first thing, yeah.
What a life.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Happy New Year, Chris. Good to have
be
you back.
guys.
All right. Well, are we ready to get into News on the March?
Absolutely.
So ready.
News on the march!
All right. So, Justin, I believe you're the only one that has seen the first thing on this list. So, I'll throw it to you. Anatomy of a Fall.
All right, so yeah, I was watching this movie to catch up for like our best of the year, best of 2023 episode that's coming up sometime soon in the next week or two, TBD. But this one was like very high on my list. It won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, so that obviously made it high on my list. It's a movie I personally didn't know a lot about, except for like the IMDb synopsis, which I don't know, maybe that was too much, because even like watching like the first 5 or 10 minutes of the movie without knowing what was going to happen, like what the main story was and what the inciting incident would be, I think would have been more fun, more surprising. But that said, this movie I think is really great. I think both of you guys should definitely squeeze it in before our best of the year episode, because I think it's one that feels to me it's like a strong candidate for either one of your lists.
Yeah, I was going to watch it yesterday, but I saw the runtime, and then I decided to fit in 2 short movies instead.
Yeah, it's kind of.
I was trying to make the most of this time of year by cramming.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did you watch it on 2 times speed?
Me?
No, I've never done that. I don't condone that, and I've never done that.
Yeah. I don't condone that either. I did not do that. I had like enough time to squeeze in a long movie, and I was debating between this and Napoleon, which are roughly similar in run times. But I had another friend who recently watched this, and she was kind of texting me the last few days saying like, I just watched this, you have to watch it. So that was kind of my deciding factor there. But this movie is it's pretty straightforward visually speaking. Like it's not going to be like a movie that's going to like wow you visually, but like the story is top notch. The acting is top notch. I was captivated. Like the runtime, sometimes starting a movie later in the evening, the runtime can be intimidating, but I kind of just pulled the trigger and went for it. But like pretty quickly I was sucked into this movie, and I think I think it's just like really, really well told, really, really captivating. I think I don't want to go too long about it because I don't really want to like spoil anything. I don't want to talk about like the themes or anything like that the movie explores, just because I don't want to warp you guys' opinion on it. I just wanted to come in here with a high recommendation.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I'll definitely have to check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. It was already on my list, but I will definitely not be recording the best of the year episode without having seen this movie first.
Yeah, it's on my list twice now.
Yeah. And it's one of those movies too that just is like I guess like a PSA is that like it's in mixed English and French.
Okay.
So a decent amount of the movie they're speaking English, a decent amount French, and the version that I watched had subtitles. Like when I had the subtitles for the French, on, it also subtitled the English, so that was a bit weird. So
yeah, that's distracting.
Yeah, I've learned to ignore it, but that's my little PSA is that. So I kind of thought it was a foreign film, so when they first started speaking English and there was English subtitles, I was like, "Is this dubbed? I don't understand." But it's not. That's my word of warning.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thanks for the heads up.
Okay, recommendation done. Since I can't talk about it much, we'll move on to Chris. Tell us about what you've been watching.
Yeah, For All Mankind is one of the things I've been watching over the holidays. And I've been watching it and thinking about how I wanted to talk about it on here. I've been watching it for a while now. I binged the first 2 seasons, is what I'll say. It's done by one of our I don't know, a resident, like, what is his name? He did Battlestar Galactica, and he did the TV show that Justin likes, or Mike likes so much. Yeah, Ronald D. Moore. Yeah. Anyways, so it's kind of run by Ronald D. Moore, and I think this has kind of the same problems that like Battlestar Galactica does. Like, there are some moments that I'm like, why am I watching this? Literally, and I will say, so okay, I binged the first 2 seasons, which may have been part of the problem. There is one storyline in particular that I despise. And literally, I never do it, and I don't condone like doing 2 times speed, but like I was so tired of this storyline that I fast forwarded. Anytime these 2 characters showed up, I fast forwarded it because I like the big ideas in this show, but sometimes the drama doesn't necessarily equal out, or they don't think about the logic of the situation that the characters are in, if that makes sense.
Did you say the name of the show?
From All Mankind. Did I not say it? I thought I did.
I don't know yet.
For All Mankind.
For all. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, Chris, the exact reason I haven't started watching this yet is because I've heard similar things like from everyone who talks about this show, which is they say that ultimately they really like it. And the big picture of it, they love. And every time a new season starts, everyone gets real excited.
Yeah, like the endings are really good,
but
the end of the seasons, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I constantly hear that like you just don't care about a lot of what's happening with like character.
Yeah, certain characters specifically, and it's never gotten as egregious as I think it was in season 2. But so I guess to give an example without giving anything away with For All Mankind, in Battlestar Galactica, which is also a Ronald D. Moore show, and I do think Ronald D. Moore has gone away from For All Mankind, but they would give these like. There's like 50,000 humans left alive, right? And the president would give these press conferences in which like there was 20 to 30 people, like reporters, like interviewing her, like in the press conference. And there's only 50,000 people alive, and it just bothered me that I'm like, what? How many newspapers are there? Or how many, why do there need to be so many people at this news conference? And things like that are like big picture that just don't work quite well. They just didn't think it through. And those on these little minutia scales, they just don't think it through. They have these big picture things. And I guess I should also say For All Mankind is here's the setup of it: is Russia makes it to the moon before America. It's a kind of like a multiverse type of thing, and so America is like in response to
alternate history.
Yeah, alternate history. And in response to that, America's like, oh, well, we will put a woman on the moon before Russia, if that makes sense. And then it's just kind of, as we move further and further along, we move and we change differently, go through history a little bit differently. And it's interesting to see the things that have changed, what has stayed the same. And that's kind of what's interesting. Justin, you said you've seen the first episode. Why have you not watched
Correct.
more?
I also have
Mike
seen
has
the first
seen the first
episode.
episode.
by the way.
Okay, perfect.
Look at that. Well, I mean, personally speaking, I guess I don't want to echo too much of what you're saying, but I enjoyed the concept, and I kind of knew that selling point, right? That like Russia beats us to the moon, and then what happens? And I think I found myself waiting for more of that, and as we were seeing characters being like sad about it in bars, I don't know, I was just kind of like I just kind of wanted more diving into like how it affected the world, and when it got down to the people, I did not care like on an individual level.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it didn't suck me in on that front and didn't give me enough of the big stuff. So, Mike, what are your thoughts on that first episode?
Oh, geez. I watched it, I think, when season 2 was going on.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember hearing a lot of complaints about what was happening currently, like in the series.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched the first episode, and I was like, okay, it seems like it could be good, but not yet.
Right.
And without the enthusiasm of like the season that was airing currently, I didn't feel like going on. Since then, I've heard more good things than bad. Since like season 3 and this current season, I've heard more good things than I did at the beginning. So
Yeah.
it leads me to believe that a bulk of the series is probably good at this point in time.
Yeah. I was recommended about a year ago when I started my job at NASA. Obviously, like this series came up, right? And it was recommended strongly to me then, and that's when I watched it. So it was like a year ago for me. I don't know. I'm tempted, but not at the same time.
I would actually, through the stuff like you recommended Three Body Problem, and you've read The Foundation, and we've done through the stuff that you have watched and recommended to me. I would recommend this to you hesitantly. There are aspects that you're not going to like but I think ultimately there are some big picture things that are fun to watch and are right up your alley. So
that's what I'm there for. So I'll consider it more than I have in the last year to keep going.
And if nothing else, you get to
I
commiserate with me with all the stupid things that are happening. So, because I think I'm in. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to not watch it, just because I'm invested now. This is like the 4th season, I believe. So I just want to know what happens next, even though there's things I don't particularly like.
Yeah, that's me and a few shows that I keep watching year to year when they come out with new seasons. I'm like, I don't know why I keep doing this to myself. I guess because I've gone this
Grey's
far.
Anatomy, you're 18, 25 seasons in, or however long.
Is that still on? Is Grey's Anatomy still on?
I believe it is.
Yeah, is it? Yeah, it's on like, it must be on season
it's
what,
gotta
20?
be. It's like 2000 or
20 something.
early 2000s.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
But like, I think like 3/4 of the people who were on the show originally, even for like the first 10 seasons, aren't there anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, sure.
Yeah, there are 20 seasons currently.
Oh, jeez.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a lot of Grey's Anatomy.
Moving
but
on.
Chris, something that has less than 20 seasons that you have been watching.
Yeah, the other
What is
thing
it?
I've been watching is Fargo, which is I watched the first 2 seasons, and then for whatever reason, I just never. I remember watching the Carrie Coon, like starting it, and it wasn't that I disliked it. I just for whatever reason, I didn't return to it after like watching the first couple of episodes, or even maybe I didn't even make it through the first episode. And it wasn't that,
Like season 3, the one with you
yeah,
and
and
McGregor?
it wasn't. That's not a comment on the quality. Maybe it has more to do with it's more to do with me and like what I was doing at the time. But I happened to be in a place where I could watch Fargo on a weekly basis, and this season 5, and I have loved it. I think all around it's great performances. I know, Mike, you're really into it. Juno Temple is, I think, after watching Ted Lasso, I did not know that Juno Temple necessarily had this in her, and she's been a standout in this season, I think. So I've really enjoyed her. Mike, what are you thinking about Fargo? How are you feeling about it? We got one episode left as of recording. So yeah.
Yeah. So you're right. I enjoy this show. I, however, did not watch season 4. I don't remember what I was doing when season 4 was airing. It just escaped me. So I've seen seasons 1 through 3 in their entirety, and I like them all to varying degrees. I intend to go back and watch season 4 after season 5 is concluded. But yeah, I also am really enjoying season 5 quite a bit. Juno Temple is great in this, which is good because, I don't know, I did not necessarily like her at all in Ted Lasso.
Especially later seasons, I would imagine, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think her entire character is just kind of a mess. I didn't really get any kind of satisfaction watching her do that, but I think that's more of my feelings on the whole show in general, especially as we get further away from it. Mm-hmm. But I've always enjoyed Juno Temple. You know, she was great in Killer Joe and a bunch of other things but she kind of disappeared for a while, and then I guess went into TV. But here she's great. I think she is obviously the shining star of this season, but I think John Hamm is pretty great too.
Really good. And I guess just give us a brief synopsis too, I guess, of what this season is.
So this season is sort of like, if you've seen the Fargo movie, it's about a man who pays kidnappers to kidnap his wife. And every season of Fargo kind of riffs on various Coen Brothers movies and kind of rejumbles plot elements and scenes and things like that. So this season is sort of like, what if a woman was attempted to be kidnapped, kind of like in the movie, with a little different circumstances, but she fights back. And so there's kind of like, if you guys have ever seen the movie The Long Kiss Goodnight with Gina Davis.
Samuel Jackson.
Not in a long time.
And Samuel L. Jackson. Yeah. Well, it's kind of like that movie. It's kind of like what happens when the kidnappers kidnap someone who's potentially more dangerous than they are.
Yeah.
And they don't have all the information they need, you know? And anyways, and this season also, I think, has a really strong theme of like domestic violence and domestic abuse that I think it's taking very seriously. And John Hamm, I think, is really good at leaning into, I don't know, kind of like a despicable guy. And it seems like he's having a lot of fun doing that. So I don't know. I think that's kind of how I would sum it up. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you're correct. Enjoyed is the wrong word, but I thought a really strong episode. Wasn't this most recently aired 10? It was episode 9. I thought was extremely powerful. I really enjoyed that, and that's kind of speaking around spoilers, but yeah, I think it's really good. I have I watch a lot of movies, or at least what I would consider a lot of movies. There are people that watch more, and TV shows and stuff.
More than the average guy.
And I don't often like get like claustrophobic, or I don't feel. I just watch the movie. You know, it doesn't necessarily make me feel anything. But when I watched this, I was like, oh God, you know, like I felt the anxiety of of Juno Temple's character, and that is,
Sure.
to me, that's spectacular. There was another movie by Kurosawa is his name. I forget. It's like The Curse. Anyways, but that also made me feel that way, and I was always like, oh man, I can't believe it made me, like I feel scared for the characters, or I feel myself putting myself in these characters' place, and I feel scared, and that's something that doesn't happen very often, and definitely it's happened in this season.
Yeah. I also want to shout out in this season Jennifer Jason Leigh, given a pretty fun performance. Joe Keery from
Keery is
Stranger
really
Things.
good, yes.
Yeah, he's pretty great. And some others. I don't want to go through the whole cast, but I don't know. I just feel like Jennifer Jason Leigh, it's always good when she pops up in something.
I think Justin hasn't. I don't know if you've watched any Fargo, to be honest, but I would definitely recommend this to Justin. I think. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I think so. I think Justin would probably dig Fargo, but maybe not. I don't know. Sometimes I don't find the show as charming as the show thinks it is.
Noah Hawley can be,
but I'm also more familiar with the Coen brothers than the average guy. So it's like I'm constantly being like, well, that's from No Country for Old Men.
Sure.
Or that shot exactly is from The Big Lebowski, or that shot is A Serious Man.
I mean, that sounds fun, but I'm curious how that reckons with your, don't make me think about a movie I'd rather be watching.
Well, that's what I think frees me in this show is they're upfront about it. Like the whole show is one big homage to the Coen brothers and their sensibilities.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's
like
it's like a good cover band. Does that make sense? So, and sometimes a good cover band doesn't necessarily play the song exactly as it is. They kind of explore like, oh, well, what makes that band a good band? And that's kind of what they're doing. Why are the Coen brothers so great? And sometimes they explore that and the different themes and stuff like that. I don't know. Noah Hawley can be a little over the top sometimes, and like, I don't know if you've ever seen Legion, but like Legion is, whoa, what's happening here? Have you watched all of Legion?
I don't think I quite finished the final season.
Okay. Well,
but
yeah, it's not quite that.
I saw
over
a
the
lot
top,
of it.
but yeah.
Oh wow!
So why?
I don't even remember this character, this person. Is he the main person? No, he's not the main person.
You looking at
Looking
Fargo?
at Noah Hawley.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
I don't think I even recognize.
I was about to say because each season is going to be a different cast of characters in Fargo.
And he's also doing an Alien TV show here coming up soon that I am interested in.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
he's the writer of Legion and Fargo. Okay.
Yeah, I think he's also like the executive
showrunner.
Showrunner.
I know that's an ambiguous term.
Okay. But so Legion was wild in terms of writing.
Yes.
Okay, I'm with you. Well, that's cool.
What has kept you from watching it, Justin?
Yeah.
Oh, time, life,
okay,
all the existential, sort of stuff that makes us not be able to do all the things we want to do.
Makes sense.
I hear that.
to put a very simple bow on that answer.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. Well, anything else that you want to say about Fargo while we're here, Chris?
No, this season's really good. I heard that 3 and 4 weren't as good as like maybe the first 2 seasons, but this seems like a return to form. So
I liked 3, but yeah, maybe you could say it wasn't as good. I haven't.
It's been
seen
a long
4,
time, honestly.
I still recommend 3 over many other shows and seasons of television that I've seen.
Yeah, I will say I think like just I guess being drawn more towards like original ideas, which I'm sure this has in it, but just like if it was a different show with the same amount of acclaim that wasn't named Fargo, I might have leaned more towards it, but I don't know. I think just something about it, I guess being based off of or using the thing, I don't know.
It makes sense.
You know what I mean?
And to be honest, I felt the same way. Like when the first season came out, and then you watch it, and that has Billy Bob Thornton and Martin Freeman in the first season. and it's really good.
Right.
So
Yeah. I miss those
Yeah.
characters sometimes.
Yeah.
I wanna go
it's
back
not
to
a
that.
good reason to have not watched it. I'm not saying that. I'm just
I hear you.
articulating.
You asked for a reason,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
gave you one.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Moving on. Final thing in news on the march is Mike's. What new old thing have you
Yeah.
been watching?
Yeah, I will keep this brief, but the new old thing that I recently watched is Oldboy.
The 4K.
A new
sorry.
in 4K. So recently, this last year, they did a limited theatrical run of a 4K remaster of Oldboy. I believe 20 years now,
Jeez.
20-year anniversary.
Wow.
I know. Anyways, I didn't get to see that in theaters because I just couldn't find the time, and it was limited showings. But I saw the other day that the 4K transfer has now hit Netflix. So we were hanging out, my girlfriend and I, and her niece had not seen Oldboy, so I threw that on. And we watched it. And it's a really good transfer. The movie's still kind of like an ugly greenish tint to it. Park Chan-wook said once, I think in the commentary, that he told his DP that he wanted the movie to look like a painting that had been painted over 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
And I think they kind of achieved that because there's like kind of some ugly greens and strange colors in Oldboy. So the movie looks about as good as it can look. But I think the real thing that I noticed on this version of the movie was how different the subtitles were to the version that I have seen, like, I don't even know how many times, 7, 8 times already in my life, you know?
Yeah.
And the new subtitles, I think, add like so much more like intuitive, like emotional meanings to things. Like phrases are phrased in a way that feels like people talk in a way that they weren't before.
Right.
I understand certain lines and exchanges in the movie better in this version than I did in the previous version because I just didn't read it that way because it was very stilted and
Yeah.
just translated, in my opinion, not with like flow in mind.
Right.
It was just trying to literally get you the translation. So this new version that you'll find on Netflix, the 4K version, in my opinion, adds new dynamics to, at least to someone who doesn't speak Korean like myself and has to read English subtitles. I think if you're familiar with that version only, is the previous release, I would definitely recommend watching the 4K version,
Yeah.
at least for a little bit, so you can kind of see what I mean. But it's like a whole new movie in a way.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. I mean, it's probably been over a decade since I've seen Oldboy, but I think I've seen it enough times that I would pick up on stuff I don't
I think you'll
remember.
spot some differences pretty quickly.
Yeah. That's intriguing. So I am always curious about what we're losing, because we cover a lot of foreign films and stuff on between the stuff we watch towards the end of the year generally and Criterion Collection.
Mm-hmm.
And that, Anatomy of a Fall, I had that too. I was like, I wonder how much I'm missing because the subtitles didn't seem that great.
Yeah.
Because I noticed on the version I watched, like sometimes it had the English subtitles even when they were speaking English. Sometimes they would be different than what they said, slightly.
Mm-hmm.
So I was interesting.
Yeah.
So that idea intrigues me a lot. I've never been more tempted to revisit Oldboy.
Yeah.
I think you should. I think it's like worth it, to be honest with you. There's just, I don't know. It just seems so much more fluid and natural.
That's interesting.
In this version than it seemed before.
Yeah. I like the idea of subtitles, or like it's a curious. You never know what you're missing, essentially, because you don't know the language, and you can only read and understand what's presented to you, and that can really make or break a movie to a certain extent.
Right. And how good the translation is, or like how well the translator understood the intention of what was being said.
Yeah.
Can like define an entire continent's understanding of the movie.
Was this a thing that is like well known? Like obviously we know they remastered it in 4K, and from that perspective we're intrigued. But was it mentioned anywhere that like was this a director supervised translation, or was there?
I have no idea, honestly. I don't know if it was director supervised or not. I like to think it was, or at least that there was great care put into it.
Yeah.
This version may not even be more accurate, but I would wager that it probably is.
Yeah.
Sure.
I would have thought the same thing 20 years ago, though. that it was director approved at the time.
That's true.
And maybe it was, and maybe 20 years later he has a different grasp of English.
If he doesn't speak English that well.
Yeah, he did not. Oh,
yeah.
When I saw, just a name drop. When I saw him at Fantastic Fest 2 years ago for his movie that just recently came out, he did not speak English. Certainly not very well. He had a translator there, and
okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I heard while he was filming Stoker that there was kind of a language barrier.
Yeah, I would believe that. I would also wager. So I did see there was a Criterion Channel, like a supplement for a movie, but it was about subtitling and how much work actually goes into that. They showed an example of a group scene, and they're all kind of overlapping chatter, right? And how they kind of have to cut that down, and make it brief. And kind of surmise it. Otherwise, the subtitles would just fill up your screen.
Yeah, it'd be like a wall of text.
And that's not enjoyable when you're watching a movie. So it's kind of like, how do you make this, the subtitles enjoyable, So that could be part of it too. It's a very interesting thing, and I think a thing that gets often overlooked, especially when it comes to foreign films coming to America or wherever it is.
Yeah. The answer is we all get on Duolingo and
start learning.
Start learning these languages.
And learn the language of the country you want to watch films from.
I'll start with the big ones.
Yeah. Start big and then work your way down. Okay. But that's all I really wanted to say about Oldboy. Still a great movie.
Awesome.
I believe it. I'm glad the subtitles didn't ruin that.
No. Just maybe improved it a little bit for me. Okay. All right. So now we're ready for the main event. Correct?
Okay, settle.
Kimmy, yeah. How do you choose your roles?
I want to find a character that's difficult to understand. Why are they like this? Were they born or were they made?
I thought you were taller. You look taller on television, but we're basically the same size.
Thank you for doing this.
Well, I want you to tell the story right, don't I? They're sweet, aren't they?
We've been together for almost 24 years now. It's hard to trust that you're going to represent things as they were.
What would make a 36-year-old woman have an affair with a 7th grader?
So good.
What's your relationship like with your kids? How is that relevant?
You're the actress playing my mother? Look me in the eye and tell me how selfish you are.
You're different than me. You're a modern woman.
Why would you want to play someone who you think is a bad person?
It's the moral gray areas that are interesting.
Insecure people are very dangerous.
I have an idea of what's sneaking around with you. Must have felt like I shouldn't have said that.
No worries.
What were your expectations?
That my children would love me and my life would be perfect.
You're a little naive.
I am naive. I always have been.
All right, so as always with our newer films, we will be doing a spoiler-free section up front where we'll talk about our general feelings and thoughts on the movie without getting into spoilers or any too many details. So if you have not seen May December, you can continue listening. We'll give you a warning, a spoiler alert, play a little bumper so that you have plenty of time to pause the podcast, go watch May December, come back, and finish listening.
All right, so May December was directed by Todd Haynes. It stars Natalie Portman, Julianne Moore, and Charles Melton. The IMDb synopsis says, 20 years after their notorious tabloid romance gripped the nation, a married couple buckles under pressure when an actress arrives to do research for a film about their past.
Boy, that's pretty vague.
Yeah? Are you being sarcastic? I can't tell.
Well, it doesn't get into the heart of the issues, but yes.
Yeah, it doesn't say why it's a notorious tabloid romance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I suppose that's true.
But I think anybody who knows anything, that's kind of the reputation of the movie.
Yes.
Right? Like we all knew that.
Yeah. Well, actually, I didn't know what it was about when I started it.
Well,
or at least if I did, I forgot.
Yeah, I guess we decide what to do. Or do we want to talk about that in the spoiler-free
Yeah,
section?
I think that's fair game. I mean, I'm not saying I was trying to avoid it. I just didn't know.
Okay.
If you've seen anything about the
At
movie,
this point,
I think you have to
maybe when it
kinda
was
know.
first coming out, people didn't know, but now people know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So without further ado, Justin, what is it about?
Yeah. So, Julianne Moore and Charles Melton, 20 years previous to when the movie takes place, they had a tabloid romance because he was a 7th grade child and she was an adult
teacher.
Julianne Moore,
36 years old and then 13-year-old, right?
Yeah, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was like 36. Yeah. So.
Yeah, which is based on a real life, loosely based, I guess, on a real life romance between people whose names I can't remember.
Is it the Mary Kay Letourneau?
Yeah,
the
Mary
teacher?
Kay.
Is
Yeah.
that her name?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. But anyways, I don't know who. Mike, you saw this a while back, right?
Yeah.
Chris, you watched it recently?
Ago. Watched it last night.
All right. Well, since it's your return, why don't you get us started, get us kicked off on your general thoughts and feelings on May December?
Yeah, man. This movie is kind of hard to unpack because there's a lot going on. There's like a movie on the surface and a movie down below the surface.
A movie
on the side.
Over there, Beck.
If I wasn't watching this for the podcast, and if I didn't know, say I just turned this on, I'd be like, what the hell is this? Especially in the first 10 to 15 minutes. To me, it's a lot like it presents as a made-for-TV type movie with the music and the cuts and stuff like that, and I think it's supposed to, because we'll dive deeper into it later. But I think it's supposed to. But it's also kind of turns you off, or at least it did me at the very beginning, because you're like, what is this? This doesn't seem super professional, if that makes sense. It's melodramatic, is what I guess I would say. But ultimately, the three leads, Julianne Moore, Natalie Portman, and Charles Melton, and especially Charles Melton, I think, give really varying degrees of a performance. That's what I'll say. I think, they are going over the top, Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman especially, but in a good way. Charles Melton, I think, is kind of the heart of this movie, and I think he carries it really well. I think he's the most naturalistic performer in this movie, reasonably so, or for a reason, if that makes sense. But ultimately, I am still chewing this movie over. I probably would like to see it a second time, because I think that there's a lot to this movie. At least having, once I finished it, I was like, oh, well, there's more to it. I'm still thinking about it, if that makes sense. And I am excited to dive deeper into it with you guys. So, we'll go in order of how recently we've seen it. Justin, what did you think?
Yeah, I'm right there with you that there's a lot going on in a couple of different movies. I find it, I guess intriguing, and it keeps me thinking about the movie, but also a bit overwhelmed by how much there is going on for what on the surface feels like a pretty simple movie. Because I think while it is melodramatic, and I can understand that viewpoint, I think it also does sort of genuinely
Yes.
dive into these characters
Yeah.
in a way that I guess like a more genuine movie would want to do, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But also has this like over the top score, and then like I think it's also like a movie about movies made on these subject matters and like what they're doing, so it's a bit meta in certain ways too.
Yeah.
And so it plays a really or walks into really interesting line, I think, trying to balance all of these things, and I think it does it pretty well. I don't think I've unpacked everything because it's just there's just so much going on. I have thoughts, I have theories. A lot of it sort of we'll probably have to go into spoilers, but I think this movie is full of great performances. A score that like does the opposite of what you do when you talk about like editing and scores and stuff. Like if you're thinking about the camera movement or the editing, then the movie's not sucking you in enough. You know, you want to be like invisible.
Yeah, you're thinking that it's
to
a
a
movie.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, this I don't know. Some of this score like almost punches you in the face the same way that like a Star Wars score does or something, right? Like you're like, yeah, okay, that's that music again. Or in like probably a more similar fashion with the All Quiet on the Western Front remake.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Did a really similar thing with its score of like, here's the score that we haven't had for a while, and you're well aware, and it punches you in the face, so to speak. But I think if you can like stomach the subject matter, that may be the only thing I would like caveat to anybody considering. This movie does not get grotesque in any way about it. It's no like mysterious skin or like hard candy or something like that where it gets grotesque or shows you stuff that's really uncomfortable to watch necessarily. I think if you can get through it, this movie has so much to think about and so much on its mind, for better or worse. And I was pretty enthralled by it, but even more intrigued, and like it's occupied my brain way more than I thought it would, even while I was watching it.
Yeah,
it's had a bigger effect on me since I was finished watching it, is what I'll say.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I will try not to repeat too much of what you guys said, but I agree that this movie has a lot on its mind. It goes a lot deeper on characters and complicated dynamics between characters and complicated actions by characters, you know, throughout the course of the movie that have you questioning whose side you're on, who you're ultimately sympathizing with. And I think it comments a lot on the culture that sort of romanticizes true crime stories and maybe causes more pain. You know, I think it has a lot of questions on its mind, and I don't know that the movie draws any definite conclusions on anything. Like, I don't think the movie has like a clean stance on a lot of stuff, and I think as a result makes it kind of more interesting and also possibly more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you that the score is pretty wacky in a lot of places, but to me it felt very obvious. Like, have you guys seen the Todd Haynes movie All That Heaven Allows? Far from Heaven, which is a riff on All That Heaven Allows.
Yes, I have, but a long time ago.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah.
Well, basically, he's emulating melodrama.
Sure.
Like, he loves the melodrama.
Yeah.
All That Heaven Allows is a melodrama, as is Far From Heaven. But he usually tries to stick some social commentary in the vein of All That Heaven Allows and kind of takes it further and more modern. I think that that's kind of been his style. Did you guys ever see Carol?
I have not seen
No.
Carol.
Carol felt a lot like that too, maybe a little more toned down. But he likes his melodramatic music
Yeah,
cues.
I like it. For the
yeah,
record.
I think he's in love with like I think the melodrama of it all, you know, to makes it kind of soapy in a way.
Have you ever heard a more dramatic reading of I don't think we have enough hot dogs of a line like that.
No.
With the score in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
and the
it's
zoom
brilliant.
in.
It's maybe my favorite like cinematic moment of 2023.
Yeah, and
So I was watching YouTube videos with Todd Haynes talking about the movie, and he says that he took a lot of these music cues from a movie called The Go-Between, which has a score kind of like that. And he said that at one point he was on the plane and he listened to the movie without any score and went through and marked all the places where he thought a music cue, like some kind of chime in, would work, you know? And he said that he just chocked it full of it. He just went as hard as he could.
But this movie, he watched it? Like May, December?
May, December.
Okay. Oh. That's cool.
Yeah. But anyway, he took inspiration from The Go-Between and tried to emulate that score, which I have not seen that movie.
Yeah.
So can't speak to that, but I kind of want to now.
Yeah.
Anyways, all in all, I say this movie's pretty
worth
good
watching
and worth it. And I would recommend it to a lot of people, but then there's some people that I wouldn't, you know?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a challenge for people to latch on to anybody in this movie, except for maybe the character of Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's, like you said, subject matter-wise, you got to give a little caveat and say, you know, if that sounds like something that maybe you don't want to handle, then probably don't watch this movie. This would be my recommendation. But to everyone else, I say watch it.
Yeah.
I almost feel like the subject matter, we are removed from it to a certain extent, like through the drama of it and the score and everything that's happening. It's almost not about that as much as it is about the making of a show about that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's certainly like they talk about it. It's talked about it as a thing that happened in the past. We don't ever flash back to, you know, a memory of it or anything like that, right? This is all 20 years later, and that's where we stay. I guess like I'm also scarred from like when we all worked at Blockbuster and we had our employee picks, and I put Mysterious Skin on mine. And someone came back and complained, you know, and I think like, so we had to take it off. But
That's fine.
Well, I think like you have a certain amount of certain people that will, you know, any movie that has anything to do with this sort of like some sort of like pedophilia, inappropriate age, like if it's not a movie that turns out to be like The Sound of Freedom or something, then they just are not going to have, they're going to see it as like a condoning sort of thing or something like that. And this movie certainly doesn't do that, but it's...
Yeah, I don't see how you could watch this movie and think that it condones that kind of thing in any way.
Sure.
I don't think so either, but nobody gets like arrested or killed for doing it or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And at a certain point, I think it even plays with our sympathies of like who we are or are not sided with at any given moment, right?
Yeah.
Or at least it tries to. I don't know if it ever succeeds. That depends on the person. But
It's more...
I think the movie doesn't seem like it's interested in forcing your hand to any kind of conclusion, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
Right.
Even
and
though I think most people will arrive at the same
you know,
place.
honestly, if it did give us a resolution or an idea that was handed to us on a silver platter, it wouldn't be as good as it would. And it actually, I think, would be similar to the movies I think he is either lampooning or trying to talk about. So it's better that it's not handed to us. In my opinion, it's better that it's not handed to us.
Yeah.
He's like, I think I've been left thinking about a thing that I'm not even sure was intended. after talking to some other people about the movie who've seen it. Because I brought up some questions and they're like, what are you talking about? So like, in some ways, I appreciate how open-ended it is, because I think there's potentially a lot of things that you could go down, like a lot of paths.
Yeah.
And ideas.
Yeah. So it sounds like we have 3 pretty hearty recommends. Does that
Agreed.
sound
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
Any orange cigarettes you got up there? I'll tell you all about it.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
And here we go.
Okay, so now that we're here, just real quick, since I was just talking about this, one of the things I found myself thinking about a lot, particularly with like the closing scene of the movie, where we're seeing, Natalie Portman actually act out one of the scenes with the kid actor for the movie she's been studying for the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
I started wondering if this movie has any thoughts or like any intention to I don't know if it has any intention to condemn anything, but I started thinking about like method acting, and like how silly, like I think there's a lot more myth than fact about method acting, out there. Like I think people, because of like extreme examples, I think people tend to have an over the top thought about it, like I what I really was thinking about was like Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight. There was like all those rumors after he passed away, before the movie came out, that like the Joker role was too dark for him, and he do you guys remember this at the time?
Yeah.
And I always thought that was kind of a bit silly, and then I think Christopher Nolan came out in an interview and was like, that's a discredit to him as an actor.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous. So my crazy sort of thing that I was thinking about when I talked to somebody was like, is this saying something on like method acting and like how dumb, using this sort of like extreme example of being attracted to a child or whatever, like,
or at least romanticizing the idea of being attracted to a child.
And she's doing the scene over and over, and she asks for one more because it's starting to feel real, I think is like the final line of the movie that she says.
Yeah.
And I was like, why would you, like, it's so silly to me that it would even go there. Like I don't know if it was going for this sort of like warped, like, look how demented she's gone, you know what I mean?
Well, I definitely think it's making a comment on that kind of method acting culture. I don't think that's the only thing it's making a comment on, but I think that's certainly part of it.
Okay, so I'm not totally off base.
No, I mean, yeah, I think Natalie Portman's entire character is like a comment. It's like the movie wants to, just as much as it wants to examine how messed up it is, the dynamic between what was a 36-year-old woman and a 13-year-old boy, and their dynamic in present day. I think it's equally interested in the culture that romanticizes,
that wants to hear every lurid detail of it.
Yeah, that wants to like dive into true crime as if it's like a story for our entertainment, and like the people that enable it, the people that flock to it for their prestige and their acting, you know what I mean? Like the whole, all of us for being interested in that kind of content, you know?
Yeah, and like giving it more light and attention and oxygen than it deserves.
Yeah, and also maybe like making it so much worse for the people involved, you know? Like the life that Joe lives right now seems pretty trapped. And part of that is probably because even if he did leave her, everyone he knows, he's kind of like a social pariah, you know?
Sure.
Yeah.
Like it's affected his life in a lot of ways, and kind of probably caused him more pain than if it had gone under the radar and wasn't like a famous case, you know?
I think he's in a case of like his kids seem older than him, or more, they understand the world better than he does.
Well, like, yeah, they've matured beyond where he ever got to in a way.
He's in a case of like what would you call it? Like he's still a child and
Arrested
Development.
Oh, perfect.
Let me get my ukulele. I'll play the intro real quick.
To take it back to the end, just real quick, I kind of want to. It's a lot like the Killers of the Flower Moon to a certain extent. The ending of the Killers of the Flower Moon. It's kind of, to me, it's saying it doesn't matter how much research we do into this, we can never get the nuanced details of it correct. You know, like even no matter how real it feels to her, she's doing this ridiculous thing with a snake. You know, like it's saying it doesn't matter. This movie we just did, you know, like we can't get the details of it right. Does it make sense? We can't tell you how these people were feeling. I don't know. It's just kind of a way of just saying to the audience, a movie is not enough to tell you how a true crime podcast or whatever actually, how these people actually feel, is kind of the nuance of it.
Yeah, I also don't know if the movie felt any different than the like TV movie sort of thing that she was watching at one point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, does it justify itself at the end? I don't know. It feels kind of similar. Like, it doesn't seem like it's going to be that good.
Sure. And because it's based on a real story, May December, it kind of feels like, well, are we part of the problem? You know, because we're watching this and they're making it, you know, like, or is he saying more about it? I don't know. There's a lot to this and that's kind of why I like it. Is it incriminating us into the same, are we part of the problem? You know, like, I don't know. I really enjoy this. What do you guys think?
And is that in sort of like a funny game sort of way? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. I mean, I hadn't even considered the funny games part of it, but like, because this is based on a true story, if this were not based on a true story, let's say, it wouldn't.
Well, the thing is, it's very loosely based on real people. It's not even, I don't even know that it's based on a true story, because the Natalie Portman character, I don't think is based on a real person.
Portman part of it, but I think she represents us as a character.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the movie itself's not based on a story. It's inspired by.
I guess I would.
Those two characters of like Julianne Moore and Charles Melton.
Right.
They're inspired by two real people, but I don't think it's a true story by any.
I don't know. I've seen this. There's this clip
Right.
going around on the internet of Mary Kay. What's her last name? And Letourneau. But it's kind of almost directly taken from that clip and put in the movie. So
it's whenever they're talking.
You were in control.
It's whenever they're talking in the bed, and it's like, you're in control, right?
Who was in charge?
You were in control. Yeah. So
they're lifting that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Certainly, it's an amalgamation of stories like this. I don't know. It's close enough that I think that there's something that they are saying about it.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I'm okay with that sort of like have its cake and eat it too, because I guess it's like using the movie to make the point about it. It's not.
It almost kind of starts off. It's kind of like a David Lynch film, because it almost starts off like, in one way,
like Mulholland Drive.
Yeah, and then it ends in a whole nother way. You're like, whoa, this is, you know, like, it starts off really melodramatic, but we get these moments, like, especially the bedroom scene with Charles Melton and Julianne Moore, when he's like, I don't know, we should talk about this, you know, like, we should go over this and talk about it, and you feel for him, and because he's never really thought about it. He's never really talked about it. And there is a real character there, as opposed to just this melodrama, you know, that's happening. Or the scene when he's on the roof with his son. Anyways, go ahead. What were you going to say, Mike?
Oh, I was just going to agree with you. It feels like now that someone else is like examining his story, it allows him for the first time to sort of step back and see it clearly himself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a scene at the beginning when Natalie Portman and the character of Joe are walking together, and he kind of almost mentions, he mentions something like I didn't think about it because, you know, implying that he was just too young to think about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of quickly moves on, and it's like he can't even talk about it. He doesn't even have the words yet to like talk about it in a way to try to describe it as not a weird thing, because he's never tried to describe it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Julianne Moore's got the character she plays has like all her like go-tos in place to try and justify herself. Like, who was in charge? He seduced me.
Sure.
Like, etc. You know what I mean? But like, he doesn't even have those things yet. You know what I mean? Like, ready to fire off. He's literally just sort of dancing around it and kind of exploring it for the first time as he's talking to her.
Yeah, he
like.
just lets Julianne Moore talk for him, is what it seems like.
Yeah.
Does the Natalie Portman character, is she taking advantage of Joe, or is she freeing Joe? I guess is the question.
No, I think she's a predator.
Just like Julianne Moore.
Yeah.
Yeah. She may not be the same kind, but no matter the reasons she's engaging in the acts that she's engaging in, she's still doing them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she still very much doesn't care about Joe.
It's just what adults do.
It's just what adults do, and also she's, I mean, basically just using it for her own ends. Like, she may not really be in love, and he may not be a 13-year-old boy, but that doesn't mean that she's not doing damage now.
Yeah. And is it a more of a research thing, or more of a that's just what adults do thing?
Right. Like, where does it begin and end?
Yeah.
Like, is she always like this, or is she just getting more like which one's Grace? Julianne Moore or Natalie Portman?
I don't remember.
Anyway, are they becoming more like one another
Gracie
because
is
she
Julianne
studied?
Moore.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is she becoming more like Grace because of she's studying Gracie, or is it, is it that she's just a predator in a different kind of way, and this is how it manifests?
Well, is she not a predator in the sense of like coming to these people and forcing all of these people to like rehash what is probably a terrible period in their life for everybody except for Gracie?
Yeah, and even then, bad for her in some ways.
Delusionally not that bad for her.
Yeah.
But for her own personal gain, right? Like, to me, even just coming here and putting everyone through this is like a bit predatory.
Yeah, it seemed like a weird thing for them to agree to, because you have to think that they understand how they are perceived, and that no movie can really do it justice.
Yeah. I mean, they spend some time trying to say, like, we want you to do this right. Like there may be some delusion that someone's gonna actually
take their side.
Yeah, take their side and have like try to spin them in a positive light or actually justify their means.
Maybe 20 years ago, there would be a movie where it sides with the Julianne Moore character.
Do you think?
I think just like as we are, and maybe even still, like where I live, but like people would be like, yeah, go get you some, Joe. That's okay. Now, if the roles were reversed, it'd be much different. But like if it's a guy, so maybe
a movie that would have sided with Joe.
Yeah, well, like, he's getting some or whatever.
It would have been like from Joe's perspective, and it would have been a victory whenever he finally, you know what I mean? His friends have been like, sweet.
American Pie or something.
Yeah.
Well, there's a whole South Park episode, right,
with Ike,
is,
and his kindergarten teacher.
He's like 5.
I don't know. I haven't seen that one.
So you haven't?
I don't think so.
It's pretty funny. I think it started a cultural phenomenon of people saying "nice."
Oh,
yeah,
I remember that happening at the time. But anyways, we're getting off subject.
But yeah, no. In my opinion, Natalie Portman's character is just a predator of a different sort.
Yeah, and I think that's why that's the incriminating part, because, or at least to me, or what I have taken away from it is because I feel that we are supposed to be her. We are the people that are interested in this story, and we want to know more about the tabloid version of this story, and we'll buy it or at least read it at the grocery store as we're checking out. So that's why I think it's somewhat incriminating, because I feel like we as the audience are supposed to be the Natalie Portman character. she's our viewpoint character at least.
Well, I think that's very much what the movie's trying to do. Is it tries to entice you with this premise, and then gives you a movie that actually makes you want to think about everyone involved.
Yeah.
And yourself and your intentions for watching it. Very Funny Games-esque, like someone mentioned earlier, Justin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
so I mean, I think that's what the movie's trying to do, in my opinion, which is sell you with like a titillating premise.
Yeah.
Or like a juicy tabloid premise. You know what I mean? Like some kind of trashy human nature kind of thing. And then whenever you get there, it's like, surprise, this movie's got stuff on its mind.
Yeah. Well, I think, there may be a section of people that that will work on, I think. And it being on Netflix is actually kind of like a good platform for that to exist on, right?
Sure.
Because how many people are just going to watch it because it's like the new thing on Netflix that came out.
Yeah.
At least for the first week or two.
And Netflix is very well known for its true crime, like documentaries.
So
I know someone at work who watched it, and I would not have expected them to. And their takeaway was just like they didn't dislike it, I don't think, but I don't know if like they would even think to consider a movie like this good or bad. It just
is.
Yeah.
It just is. Yeah. It's like someone made it and he watched it and it was messed up and you know what I mean? And that's like, that's where it stops.
It's
like
the movie about the, adult who slept with a 7th grader. I saw that movie.
And like how it messed him up.
Yeah.
Like,
so to a certain extent,
but does it work on us though? Because I mean, like, I know it's Todd Haynes.
No,
right?
I was watching it for the Todd Haynes element of it, and
we're familiar with Todd Haynes and like Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman.
And the kind of movie I assumed it was.
And I got what I expected. So like, I don't know. It's an interesting little conundrum of if that's what it wants to do.
Well,
yeah, and maybe not. Who knows, really.
I don't know.
But the fact that it's about this and it does have something on its mind, I would rather, like, if I'm going to watch a movie about this kind of subject matter, I don't want to watch whatever Natalie Portman's filming at the end of the movie.
Yeah, I don't feel dirty after watching this movie. I didn't feel dirty last night after I finished it. Like, if that makes sense. As opposed to if I think I had watched the straight version of this movie, where it was the Natalie Portman version,
Where it wasn't equally interested in condemning the culture around it.
Yeah. Because I was more like, my mind was a little bit more turning. I was like, oh, whoa, I don't know what is this movie trying to say? And ultimately, I think it is condemning these things, and it is condemning the culture. I don't think you can make a straight movie about this because of what it's saying at the very end. We can't get it right, like we can't tell you how these people felt. That's how.
Yeah.
That's what I take away from it.
Yeah.
So the last scene between Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore, when Julianne Moore is basically saying, like, it must be terrible being insecure. She's like, I'm naive. I always have been. In some ways, it's been a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? What do you guys take away from that? I mean, is she right? Is she wrong? Is that a victory? Is her being naive? Like, I get what she's saying from her point of view, but is that sort of lack of self-awareness and lack of introspection? I don't know. I mean,
I think to a certain extent, Julianne Moore is acting just as much as Natalie Portman is, and they're both trying to get to know each other.
Yeah.
As they do this thing, and it's kind of about who is manipulating whom. Like, so at the end, I think that's what you realize, or Natalie Portman's character realizes, that she
was manipulated.
Yeah, to a certain extent.
She was manipulated by Julianne Moore, or the I know she's like the brother kind of told her the story that Julianne Moore was assaulted by her brothers.
Yeah,
but Julianne Moore was aware that it was happening and was aware that conversation took place. Whether she encouraged him or just he told her, either way, she had the upper hand.
She already knew that Georgie, I think was his name, had was going to tell her that. And I got the implication. What I got from that conversation was that she had told Georgie to tell Natalie Portman that to make her look more sympathetic. Whether or not it actually happened, I don't know.
Well, and it also, I think, lets Natalie Portman know that she was wrong about the premise of that relationship to begin with. Like, it was multiple assumptions being shot down at once, right? It's the assumption that, okay, I understand her because I understand her troubled childhood. And also, I understand her because her relationship with her son is telling me these things. He clearly doesn't care, and he hates his mom, and still has and harbors ill will towards her, and wants to spill the tea,
Well, yeah. Well, huh.
And on both accounts, she's wrong in that assumption as soon as Julianne Moore lets her know that she's aware of that conversation, right? So Natalie Portman, all this ground she thought she gained for her method acting, she realizes Julianne Moore was manipulating events the whole time.
Yeah. So was that true or untrue? Because if I remember correctly, Julianne Moore says that, you didn't believe that, right?
I don't believe it.
I mean, I think it's left
necessarily
up to you to decide whether it's true or not. And I think ultimately that's what the revelation is that I felt like it was a manipulation from Julianne Moore. And Julianne Moore's like, I am in control of this situation. No matter how in control you think you are.
And it's because she lacks that insecurity that Natalie Portman does. Like, she's the kind of person that I think deludes herself so well.
Well, and I think we kind of get
that she just doesn't care about,
and we
things and doesn't
kind of get those scenes with Joe. I think Joe would have left her a long time ago, but Joe sees this, what he considers like he can reconcile with her, like these scenes where like she's just crying, like, oh, they didn't buy my cake, or they canceled their orders, and Joe's the only one that can like talk her back to health or whatever, to normalcy. But I don't know, and certainly in Julianne Moore's performance, it's over the top. So you are thinking, well, maybe this isn't real. She's just trying to keep Joe under her thumb.
Yeah, this is what she does whenever she starts to feel him get restless.
Yeah, I mean, very early on, I got vibes that she was going to be manipulating throughout the whole thing. So I think there was that lens throughout the movie. Even the scene with her daughter picking out the dress.
Oh yeah,
and she's like, "You're so brave, showing your arms like that."
Sure.
I wish I had that confidence.
Yeah.
Like, oh
yeah,
that was brutal.
Well, she's manipulating Joe. I think we can all see that, but also how much of it is actually conscious manipulation, and how much of it is this has always been their dynamic, because when they started, he was 13.
Well, I think she's always been manipulating him.
She's always been manipulating him, but now does she even realize she's doing it, or is it just the way their relationship is because of the inherent power dynamic that's always been there? Like, they've never been on equal ground. He's been in a state of like
he's still
perpetual
13.
Teenage mentality in a lot of places, right? Yeah. So he never grew up to be like a functioning, arguing adult. So all she has to do without even thinking about it is throw a fit and cry, and he won't know what to do. He doesn't have the skills to navigate something like that, so he can just sit there and like cave.
Sure. And I think that's kind of where it comes in with Natalie Portman too, is she's also at some point trying to manipulate Joe,
who again is not equipped to not be manipulated.
Yeah, he can't help it at this point because he's still 13 in a lot of ways,
Right.
Well, there's an element of like, if you tell yourself the same lie over and over enough, you believe it, right? If you live a certain way, if you do certain things, it becomes real, right? And like, to me, that's almost the only way that this sort of situation would work, with them staying together and whatnot, is that, in your defense when you get caught, is that you say, oh, this isn't just like a perverted thing, we're in love, right? And you say it over and over.
Yeah.
And I think and then sorry, just broke the end with Natalie Portman, right? We're doing the scene over and over again.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
And it starts to feel real, also feels like it applies to that as well.
Yeah, and I think he gives another reason why he might still be in this relationship that's outside of that Julianne Moore manipulation, and that is, well, if what we did was so horrible, what about my kids? Like, were they born out of this? You know, like, he loves his kids, and do they come from this evil place or this place of manipulation? And I don't know. I think that is the one thing that he does when we see him come out of his shell, out of his 13-year-old shell or whatever. We see him. He loves his kids, you know, even though they seem older than him. In a lot of ways, they're taking care of him. I found that interesting. That was a good moment in the movie.
Yeah, it's interesting just how well this movie has all the melodramatic stuff that we've been talking about, but all of these real moments where, you know, where we encounter her son, who she had at the time when she had the affair, and all the stuff with the kids and their feelings, and that felt very real, you know, in comparison.
Well, I think that's what makes the movie work, is balancing melodrama whenever it's something like a music cue and a character realizing something, and then balancing out with like being very real and kind of understated whenever it matters.
And especially with the Joe character. I think it's almost like Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman are in their own movie to a certain extent. But with Joe, it feels, you can feel him really being 13, the arrested development of it, and him, the confusion, you know, or like the repetitive nature, like you said, of this relationship, and why he really believes these things. And that's why I don't know if Charles Melton will be, but I think he gives a great performance in this movie. I don't know if he'll be Oscar nominated, but I think it's
almost too understated of a performance
compared to the other ones, or just because
to get that Oscar nomination.
Oh, sure.
Right? Like, I think it'll be too easily overlooked, despite how good it is.
Yeah. Well, considering he comes from, like, what is the name of that show? It was on like WB, Archie and Jughead, but it was
Riverdale.
Riverdale. Yeah. Maybe he doesn't have the clout yet.
Which I didn't know when I was watching.
Neither did
I didn't either. I've seen him in something, but I couldn't place what. It's not that. Yeah.
Cool.
I liked it.
Do we have any other things we want to talk about?
I think we could talk forever about this movie, but I think we should end it there.
Yeah, probably so. That's back to the original point, is that there's so much. Like, I've still just been I've just been mulling over so many things about the movie.
You think we'll talk about this in our top 10?
Maybe.
I think it's possible.
Currently.
Currently, it's a possibility. I still have, personally speaking, I still have a few things to catch up on, so it's not a guarantee for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's possible.
Same.
Okay. Well, if we're done, then that also does it for this episode, right?
It does.
It does.
Indeed.
All right. Well, thank you, listeners, so much for listening. As always, thanks Jake Wagner-Russell for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, go to soundcloud.com/bopscotch. If you want to vote to help choose our next Criterion film, there's not a poll up, but you should follow us on X, Twitter at casualcinecast. That's the best place to follow us. That's where we post the polls. What's our next episode, Mike?
Good question. In the show notes, it says Casually Criterion with 3 question marks, which is possible. We could do Blast of Silence, which was the winner of the last poll, or we could do the best of the year before it gets too far into January.
Yeah.
Or
we
could do, well, we've always done the most anticipated before the best of the year, but the best of the year and then the most anticipated would work too.
Okay. I think we should try to do best of year a week from today, from recording.
Oh, man, that's a lot of movies.
Yeah, I gotta do some catching up.
Yeah, same.
But not too much. I'm a bit more on it this year than some past years.
Yeah, I've got like 4 movies I really need to get, but some of them are long.
Yeah, I think I'm in the 3 to 5 range. somewhere in there.
I'm way behind.
But okay.
Rock on.
Well, if that's it.
I think that's it.
All right.
All right.
Talk to you guys later.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye.